what you shouldn't do, and things like that. So more how to improve your application on the UI from the UI perspective.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. We'll get back in another 10 more minutes. Okay, so we can have a small break. You can keep being seated out here, and if you got any more questions, you can keep giving it to the ushers out here. Thanks a lot. See you in another 10 minutes.
Just a quick thing, guys.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing my screen, and this is the developers.google.com. If you go to developers.google.com/live, there is a calendar, and you will see Android Developers Lab there. This is where the show is live every Thursdays on 11:30 p.m. IST. And this is the moderator below where you can post your questions. And there are already some questions. You can add more there. That's the link.
Perfect, guys. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Round of applause, guys. Yeah.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can take your seats, or if you want to just have some water, the water stations are at the extreme corner of the hall. Make sure if you drink some water and be back right here. We're going to start exactly in 10 minutes because our delegates are waiting on the other side. We're going to start exactly in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So we can start our next session.
All right.
All right.
If you can help us pin up the slides again on the screen.
Yeah, we can see that.
Great. So welcome back. So the second session, we are going to talk about Android design. So let's talk about style in Android. So in Android, as you know, we have like many different devices and different form factors and resolutions. So so one thing to keep in mind when you design an Android application is that you have to make your layout, your design really flexible to accommodate all these different devices. So sometimes you may need to create multiple layouts. And also specify assets for these different devices, having different resolution of images. So one very key concept I would like to make sure the developer understand is density independent pixel. The short form is DP. So what is a DP? So DP, by definition, is really one pixel at 160 dpi. So in 160 dpi is what we call MDPI in Android. So in MDPI screen, one pixel is equivalent to 1 dp. And there is a equation for translating dp to pixel. So this is probably more for a UI graphic designer. So one key concept I want you guys to take away is dp is really a physical unit. So it's just like centimeter or meter, right? And dp is really a physical unit regardless of resolution. So let me show you an example of graphics here to kind of like strengthen your understanding of what really DP is. So below you see kind of hypothetical like devices you having different resolution. So you can see the little square. There are 4 squares here, and each of them has different pixels, different number of pixels. In this case, for MDPI, we have a 4x4 square, and in this case is really 4 DP. And one interesting thing about DP is, as I mentioned before, is a physical unit, right? So how I get the 4 DP? Because remember when we under the MDPI, 1 DP is really 1 pixel, and in this case here, the MDPI square here has 4 pixels on each side, so that's why we the physical length is really 4 DP across all these like different resolution of devices. So in this, in other words, like in an extra high density device with a lot more pixel, but DP wise is still the same. So what happens if you define an image using pixel instead of DP? So what will happen is the image will become very small in an extra high density resolution screen, but it will get like scaled up in a low DPI device, and because of the nature of pixel, and we want to avoid that. We want to design layout that work across different resolution for a given fixed physical form factor. So one thing I mentioned actually in the previous session as well is to select different form factor. In Android 3.2 or later, we introduced something called smallest width, and 600 dp is really the magic number for selecting a 7-inch. So, but before 3.2, the SW smallest width is not available as a qualifier. It's a new qualifier. So before 3.2, you have to stick with using small, medium, large, and extra large layout. But unfortunately, those are not resolution independent. So that's why you may run into issues in the past because when using these qualifier. So another thing about UI is when you design a touchscreen UI, you want to make sure the user will feel comfortable touching on all the different elements on your application. So at Google, we did extensive research on what kind of height of a particular object or an item user will feel comfortable touching on. And turns out it's a range because of different size of hands and fingers, and the magic number is kind of around between 7 to 10 millimeter. So in Android, we take kind of like the middle ground and decided like 48 dp is the recommended height for an item or a title in a layout. So it's roughly equivalent to 9 millimeter, which fall under the range our research result. So this is something we recommend for any list item. Anything smaller than 48 dp is going to be the user will have a tough time to hit the heat the item correctly. And on top of the 48dp recommendation, we also recommend developer always to leave some padding or gaps between elements of things in your application. For example, icons, we recommend to have a 8dp padding, and for button we have 4dp. So here is another kind of layout example, what kind of recommendation of height of different things in your application. But one thing I want you to pay attention on this image is the two vertical bar with 16 dp width on the edge of your UI, and why we want to leave a vertical padding on both sides of the phone. Turns out when you hold your phone, your palm and your fingers are very easy actually to reach those two sections. And that's why we recommend developer to leave some padding space on each side of the phone to avoid like false positive like event because when due to like when the user holding the phone and makes and touch the screen by mistake. Some more best practices to share with you guys. So always use wrap content, field parents, and of course like DP when you define your XML layout, and never use pixel value in your code because it's not going to work on devices with different resolution, and absolutely not use the absolute layout because it's totally deprecated and it's not going to work on different devices. So we learned our mistake, and that's why we deprecated really early. Also for access, graphical access, make sure you have the right access, different resolution for different devices. And one tip about developing on Nexus 7 is Nexus 7 actually have the TV DPI. So if you want to optimize your application or games on Nexus 7, that would be another bucket you want to consider. The next topic I want to talk about is Action Bar. So Action Bar is really our main recommendation in terms of building Android application after Honeycomb or later. So in the past, like we have the concept of options menu and also older generation of Android phone also have physical buttons, and we find it really hard for user, and turns out we found users very aware actually will discover or use the stuff in the option menus. And we thought about this problem, and then we decided to think Action Bar actually could be a solution to expose these option menu to the user more appropriately. So here is an example of an Action Bar. So Action Bar have 4 major components. The first one is the app icon, which is your brand, your company brand logo. And it also adds a back or up navigation within your application. The next component is view control. So it's really a spinner. So we use this mainly for user to maybe select different accounts, or if your application have contents in different category, you can use this view control to switch from one category to another. The third component is action buttons, and it works nicely and render appropriately in different form, in different devices or different size. So here is an example of Gmail, right? So in Gmail, if you are using a tablet, so everything is going to be on top and showing all the action items, as well as like when you rotate your phone in the landscape mode. But when you're in the portrait mode, the action item, if you set with a proper settings, you can have your action item actually flowing under on below at the bottom instead of showing it on the top as well. Another property configuration you can set on action bar is you can create something called stack action bar. YouTube is using that feature, and as you can see, the spinner or tab instead of showing it on the same row with the action bar, it's actually displayed on a second row instead of like going together with the first row with the action bar. And it will flow properly when the user rotate the phone into the landscape mode. As I mentioned before, you can have the action buttons showing up at the bottom, and this is what we call split action bars. And the configuration you need to do is to add in your manifest. In the layout, you have to add this special option called split action bar when narrow, and this will trigger the action bar splitting the action item to the bottom. So as I mentioned before, there are limited space that you can show action items on the action bar. So what actions should you choose to show mainly on the screen? So it turns out we have a recommendation or scheme that can help you to make that decision. So this is what we call the fit scheme. The first thing you want to consider is how frequent is that particular action is used by the user. If it's going to be like more than 70%, that may be a good choice to put it permanently on the action bar. Is it going to be repeated activity, repeated action? If that's the case, then it's also a good candidate. The next things you want to consider is how important that action is. Is it one of the major action on your application? And finally, you want to see is it whether something is typical to show in the application in your category. So if most of the application in the same category as your application are showing a particular action, and you may want to also consider putting that as well. So one example is like in most application, the search action is always exposed to the user on the action bar. So that may be something that's really typical, and user expect to see that action available on the action bar. So as I mentioned before, we have an overflow menu which to hold the rest of all the available options, and in this case we have a legacy support as well, because if an old application deploy on Jelly Bean or ICS, because there is no physical button on some new phones nowadays, and so we will, instead of showing not showing the options menu. We are going to show it through this what we call legacy like overflow menu in the navigation bar. Again we're using vertical dots to indicate that's the menu item. Sharing is also a very popular common feature developer use in their application. So we want to make it easier for you guys to implement sharing. So in ICS, we add something called Share Action Provider. So this is something you can configure in your menu.xml for a particular menu item. You can specify it using the Share Action Provider, and then it will show up the UI is kind of like having the 3 dots on the, just like what you see on the screen, and it is already pre-configured and it's also intelligent too. So if the user use a particular application frequently to share things, the icon of that particular app will show up. So in this case, like this user use a lot using Gmail to share pictures, and Gmail is the default sharing application showing up on the action bar. Some guidelines on the action bar icons. So the dimension is really 32 by 32 dp, and but the effective space you can use is, because we always want to introduce some padding, as I mentioned earlier. So the effective size of the action bar icon is really 24 by 24 dp. The style of the action bar icon is flat, and we don't want to have too much detail in the icon as well. And we use a smooth curve, and we try to avoid like too sharp edges. And if the icon is too thin, consider to rotate at 45 degrees. And so in this case, one of the examples is the pencil we have there is a thin object, right? So in this case, we rotate it 45 degrees. And finally, for color choice, one thing about action bar icon is it should use grayscale color. You shouldn't use color icons. The next topic I want to talk about is notification, and as I mentioned in the previous sessions, like we enhance notification a lot in Jelly Bean, and I want to cover that in more detail. So this is the base layout you have on notification prior to Jelly Bean, and so it still works the same in Jelly Bean, and but we add something new called expanded layout in Jelly Bean. So what that means is now you can show more information to the user, and if they want to see, and it's optional because we are controlling this like through some gesture. So both layout will be available if based on what the developer implements, and the user can use a gesture to pinch, zoom, or 2-finger glide to expand the notification to see more details. So one thing we introduced, become first-class citizen, is in notification is action. So actions are things like you want to handle like most of those like common tasks without like going back to the application. In this case, like for calendar, you can implement something like a snooze function. So the key idea here is to streamline the user experience. You don't want to you want user wants to quickly get things done. So that's the key idea. And so how can you design notification to achieve that? So make sure you spend some thought to about that. And so one thing about notification is do not abuse it. I mean, there's some good action things you can do, and the fit criteria, the fit scheme can help you to make decisions on what should be included, what action should be included in notification. And notification action has to be like also time critical, and some bad use of actions are things that are not simple. I mean, if it's a very complicated process, don't include that in notification. And also don't duplicate like default actions. Like what I mean is like when someone click on a notification, that will open your application, right? So you don't have to create another action, another button in your notification to do the same thing. So there are different places user interact with notification. Of course, it's the notification status bar. They will see a quick preview or an icon of when a notification comes in. And another thing is for ongoing notification is going to be persist on the notification drop down. And finally, one thing, one recommendation is like stuff. There are things like that meant to be done through like dialogue and toast, and make sure you understand like they serve different purpose, and don't mix them up, and how to distinguish what should be used in what scenario is actually clearly mentioned and documented in our design guideline. Spend some time to read on that. So when to use notification? So one thing to always keep in mind is that it has to be unintrusive, and it mainly used for inform user on really time-sensitive events, like a meeting is coming, or a chat if someone is trying to chat with you. So these are all like time-sensitive things. So when not to use notification, turns out that actually there are a lot of things you shouldn't use notification for. For example, things like not directly related to the user, of course not time sensitive, or for things like already visible when the user already is on your application. Don't show an extra notification when the user is already using your application. And as a developer, we always tend to include like a lot of low-level stuff, like but for user they don't care about some of like error or stack trace. Like don't include those things in notification. Something like some errors that is recoverable always not a good candidate to put it as notification. And try to avoid like putting notification just for like brand awareness, like kind of like advertising. So those are the things like not to do. Some design guideline for notification. So number one is make it personal, because it's really a chance for you to interact with the user from your application. So make it useful to the user. Notification also need to navigate to the right place. So what I mean by that is when someone click on a notification, it should go to the right spot in your application. So an example of this is like if someone click on a GChat notification, it should go to the chat session between the user and that particular user, right? Not just the chat list, right? And finally, notification should be they should clean up intelligently. So what that means is like if you have a calendar notification, if the event is already in the past, so probably makes sense to just clean up the notification programmatically without even the user looking at it. And this kind of thing is very helpful, and user will appreciate you take extra effort to make this not clog up the notification window. And as I mentioned before, now notification have different priorities. So now we have 5 different levels of priority. So for maximum things, it's going to be like incoming call or navigation, like GPS navigation, that kind of stuff. Chat and SMS will be in high priority, and everything else is the default. And if you have some occasional thing or just something that not super important, you can set it to low and minimum priority. So based on the setting you set up, the Android framework will determine what to based on these notification priority to sort all these different notification and display it to the user. So as a developer, you may have the question is like, oh, of course I want to put it set it to the max, right? So every time a user use the Android phone will see my notification on top, right? Well, it doesn't work that way, right? I mean, a smart user will spot like someone abusing the framework, and at the end, actually, instead of you get the most attention from the user, your app actually get uninstalled. So make sure you respect the priority and use it appropriately, because users are really smart these days. And by the way, they can disable your notification altogether. Remember that new feature. So one more thing about notification is stacking. So it's one if you have multiple notification, the wrong thing to do is to show them all in the notification window. So what you really should do is to combine them, and then show them there are actually a number of notification using the number pending signal in the UI. And another useful feature in the framework is you can always provide a peek of the notification on the status bar for a short period. So make sure, I think that's actually very useful, and make sure you can think about how to leverage that. So some icon guidelines for notification. So the recommended size is 24 by 24 dp, and we always want to leave some padding, so the effective size is 22 by 22 dp. The style is again flat and simple, using some simple single visual metaphor. And in terms of color, it's entirely white. So I saw a lot of notification icons using colors, and that's actually not our recommendation. So if you are consider if you want to be considered like a feature or build a Android style application, make sure you don't use other color. And Anyway, is going to talk about multi-pane layout. Anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So we're going to talk about multi-pane layouts, which has become more important since different form factors and larger screens started coming into play. So with the launch of the first devices in Honeycomb, we realized the need for creating these multi-pane layouts where you can see different panes or different panels on the screen showing kind of data that's related or grouped together to that particular pane. So can you guys see the presentation? Or all right. So okay, let's look at the screenshot here. So you see a three-pane layout there, and on the left side you see the contact list, and on the middle you see the details of the contact. That's another pane, and on the right side you see some of the updates coming from the user, the contact that is. And how do we achieve this? So with Honeycomb, we introduce fragments to solve this problem of making reusable containers of UI with the life cycle, and these are called fragments. So essentially on the screen you're looking at three different fragments, and these two fragments can be placed in different activities, same activities, and can be used differently for different layouts. So this is what a fragment can do. They're kind of independent. So the first one is a list view fragment. It's just querying your contacts and trying to get a list. The second one is a detailed form with an image that shows the phone number. And the third one is, again, kind of a list view showing the stream of data that are coming in. So these are three different fragments. On a tablet, we're going to show them all together because we have the real estate to do that. Next. And the same stuff on phone would use different fragments. So so that's the form factor thing. Now, if you just look at the same app running on a landscape and a portrait mode, here you can see that when the device is in portrait mode, we've got again a list of settings there, and each details of the settings or whatever options are available within the settings are available. And as soon as we rotate the device, these kind of stretch and compress depending on the orientation. So when you rotate a device, we see lesser items, but they've kind of stretched, and you have more options available there now. So this is one of the strategies with fragments that you can achieve. So we're basically talking about how we can, what different strategies do we employ when there is a rotation and an orientation change in the device. So the next strategy is a stacking strategy. If you look at this, there's a monthly view of calendar below, and there's kind of a detailed view of just a calendar date view below, and there's the detailed calendar view which shows your appointment slots. And as we rotate the device, instead of doing a vertical stacking, we're now just stacking them horizontally. So this is stacking is another way of achieving or just being able to use the real estate available to you and with the help of fragments. So these are individual fragments that are arranged in a different layout. So when you rotate the device, we go to the landscape, or we go to the landscape folder in your resources, and we pick up the layout where you have the fragments stacked horizontally. And you just use the XML to describe this, and the system will take care of it. The other strategy is expand and collapse. Again, you can see here when you're in a landscape mode, when you're switching to portrait mode from landscape, we kind of like collapse the list of contacts, and then you just see the chat window there. This is a strategy you can employ depending on the kind of application you have. Another strategy is the show height strategy. So if you look at this, this is the Gmail application. In the landscape mode, we have the list of emails in your inbox available, and on the side we have the email itself, which you can read. But as soon as you rotate your device, we give you a full screen view of the email, so and we really hide the other fragment out of the picture, which is the list fragment, and so you can concentrate and focus on reading the mail. We don't really want compress this and still show the list fragment, because it's a bad experience when reading the mail, because it's more like a page view. So with the landscape mode, we have more UI real estate available, so we can show you a good pane for reading the email. But when you switch to portrait, we hide the other fragments. So another strategy is show and hide. The other thing I want to talk about is backwards compatibility. So if you look at this, we have virtual navigation controls now. For example, the action overflow button. It's not really a hardware key. In the newer smartphones, we don't have hardware buttons, some of them. And so it's provided as a virtual, the navigation control. So you can switch to different places within your app using that navigation. But on the older devices, we have physical navigation key, which again map to the same navigation. And if your newer device, if your older device has the hardware button, you press that and you get the same the menu items or the action items available. And so what is really compatibility is that when your legacy apps, or that is your old apps, are running on new phones, which do not have the hardware button, and you target the right SDK, which is the SDK running on the new phone, we will have a sort of a virtual navigation control that appears right next to the soft buttons, and this will use the same, will trigger off the same navigation that was available from the hardware menu button. So this is the kind of compatibility we provide. But you have to make sure that you test this and make your target SDK version to the newer version, and then we will apply the compatibility to your apps.
Yeah, this is a very easy way for user to find out your application is out of date. So make sure you take some time to update it and then use the new action bar.
Right. So another thing, and that's been around for a long time, is action bar. With Honeycomb, we actually provide the action bar in the framework, and now it is available in ICS and Jelly Bean. Phone apps, tablet apps, everything, every app can use an action bar. But if you're running an older version of the OS on a device, we have a sample in the SDK called Action Bar Compat, and this basically provides an action bar for older devices. And it's kind of a thin wrapper which will default to the implementation when running on older device. And if you're running this app on a newer device, it will default to the new implementation, the framework implementation. This is not a complete sample. It's some kind of reference code that you can use to figure out how to do stuff. There are other libraries, like there is Action Bar Sherlock, which is very popular and a very nice library to include Action Bar in your apps. And it's a very recommended pattern using the Action Bar, because if you look at most of the apps that come with that are shipped by Google, you would see the notice the use of Action Bar, because the user is very tuned to using it and finding actions there. And it's a pattern we recommend, and that can help you keep your users happy. Also, do use fragments. Definitely use fragments, even though your idea may not be multi-pane and you just want to show a single, you're writing an app on the phone to show a single fragment, a single pane on the UI. Definitely write it using fragments, because there is more to fragment than just being a UI component. And these are reusable. So tomorrow, if you decide to develop a tablet app, you can reuse this fragment and put a detailed fragment right next to it, and and help you organize your UIs for different layouts. We had phones initially, and then came the tablets, and then Google TV, and there's Nexus Q. There are different kind of hardware form factors coming on. And if you have fragments, you have reusable code, and you can choose how many fragments or how to lay out by just putting the right XML in the resources folder. And this will help you save some time and help you refactor and keep your code in a better shape. And another feature is that is swipeable pages. So if you see on the slide there, you can just do a gesture of a swipe, and then you can move from one tab to the other tab. So we are going from the contact tab to the start contact tabs, which has some nice pictures. If you have an app, or if you have want to target or provide this feature for users running older version, we have a compatibility library. It's more like a support library, which provides some of the new features in the older versions. So the class there is ViewPager. And using this class, it is backed up by an adapter, and you can attach the fragments to an adapter, and then you can just swipe through them. It's very easy to use this library. If you look at the screenshot there, you just right click on your project and say Android tools, add compatibility library, and this makes all the new features available to older versions of phones too. So definitely look into it. It's not just a view pager. There are fragments and there are loaders which help you asynchronously load data, and they are much better and more efficient and help you write good apps.
Yeah, another thing I want to add on top of regarding the support library is as we announced in the Google I/O, we are going to bring back like action bar support for pre-honeycomb devices through the support library. So stay tuned.
Yeah. And this is a very important section, and which we've called Pure Android, and what it means to provide a pure Android experience to your users. Android users are kind of picky and they are smart, so don't mimic UI from other platforms. Don't bring in icons that are available on different platforms, or assets that are available on your different apps over to Android. Try not to do that. For example, if you see here, the top bar there has Android specific icons, and then you got the iPhone and the Windows Phone icons. Do not use those assets coming from Windows Phone or iPhone into the Android, because the user is not very comfortable with them, does not appreciate that. Use the right assets and build a UI that goes with the native feel and look of apps on Android. A good example here, bottom bars. So if you see the Android there is using a bottom bar with a call button and just the icons there, and that's what you got to do. There are tabs on top there, and just use the right UI for Android. One of the most important things, and this is something that we see in a lot of phones, apps that are coming from iPhone, is the back button there, the label back button that you see on the top. Android has an up navigation feature available, and also has the hardware back button key, hardware or a soft phone soft button there, and users are used to using the back button available on the phone itself as part of framework. So do not put these label back buttons on the UI, because user is just not comfortable. It breaks the pattern and the flow of how the user is using his phone if your app just provides something that is out of place there. Another thing, the right caret. So if you look at it's a very common pattern in iPhone iOS apps. Is the right caret symbol that leads up to another UI. So if you click on Wi-Fi there, you would open up, it would just swipe the page out and put you to another page. So for Android, use the right assets and use the right navigation. And I mentioned this before, and Tony covered this in detail. Use action bars. They add a lot of value to your app. Definitely use action bars and build. And we have very nice APIs and location services, and the new location providers are really good. So build intelligent, context-aware apps. Use the power of the platform to power your apps. Distinguish your app from other platforms. Distinguish it from other apps on the Play Store, and you will definitely have success as a developer. So these are some of our advices. Follow our patterns, recommended patterns, which have been successful with user. Leverage the power of the OS. Leverage what's available in Android. Use technologies like Beam to transfer data. Make your apps interactive, intuitive. We have a very nice sync framework for syncing data from cloud, and your app doesn't have to be running on the foreground to do this. If you use a sync provider, you can the system kicks off the sync process, will schedule the sync process, and will batch together all the apps and their network needs together. So use the sync provider to load the data that your app needs. Do not try to fetch the data when the app loads or comes into foreground. You don't want to show a loading icon there and just have the user wait. Instead, use sync. And don't be too aggressive with it. Don't write your own code or background services. There is an adapter that does a timely schedule. Use those framework services, the sync services, to get the data so that your your request is batched with other network requests, and it's not waking up the phone a lot more consuming battery. And focus on user experience. You may have a great feature set for your app, you may have nice functionality using different online services, but user experience is really important. A user experience really kicks it off with the user. So focus on user experience using some of the techniques that we've shared with you, with notifications, with fragments, with multi-pane layouts. Create a nice fluid flowing experience for the user. Another thing is we have a lot of capabilities for offline support, starting from file storage to share preferences to SQLite database implementation. You can back up your data onto the device and use these features to provide offline support for your application. In some of the countries, especially like India, network is not that. At many places, network is not that great, and users appreciate a place where even if they don't have a Wi-Fi signal, they should be able to run their apps or find data. So this is really critical and really important. Do think about providing offline support. Do not always rely on an internet connection or a good internet connection, and fetch your data, preload your data so that the user can load the app without network. So that's about it, and we will open up the floor for questions again. There are a couple of important links here. What we've covered from design guideline, if you go to the site developer.android.com/design, you will see most of those guidelines there and a lot more, which you should definitely read. And we also have a blog, and there's the URL for the blog is there, where we have a post about some optimizations or techniques and tips from some of the framework engineers. So do watch out for our blog for updates, and you can pick up some performance tips there.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Give it up for Anirudh and Tony, please. So, Anirudh, we are really running totally late, and it's lunchtime, and we are supposed to start our next session in under 30 minutes. So, we have to cut short completely our Q&A sessions, and I think we'll encourage all of them to post it directly on your G+, and get in touch with each one of you, and also get in touch on all the Android forums that you got.
Sounds good.
Okay, so once again, thanks a lot on behalf of Tony and Anirudh. Thanks for attending, and we'll break out for next 30 minutes. Thank you, guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you are back exactly by 2:15. We're going to start the next session. The track 1 is going to start exactly at 2:15. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I beg your pardon, it's going to be 2:20. Remember, it's going to be 2:20. 2:20 is the time where we're going to start with our next session right here, track 1. Thank you.